What's cracking, y'all? You are now watching Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today.
What's cracking, y'all? I want y'all to let me know what you think about this one. I found this post by Basketball Forever on Instagram, and they said, who you picking? The all-time Heat team, the all-time Warriors team, or the all-time Spurs team? Right? The all-time Heat team consisting of Shaquille O'Neal, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Jimmy Buckets, Chris Bosh. The Warriors team consisting of Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Wilt Chamberlain. And the Spurs team consisting of Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Iceman, George Gervin. Now, at first, when I was looking at this, my eyes snapped to the all-time Heat team and the all-time Warriors team. And I'm looking at those marquee, trademark, star-studded players, right? Shaquille O'Neal, big personality, all-time great, dominant. You got the Heatles, LeBron James, the polarizing player he is, Dwayne Wade, Jimmy Buckets popular these days, Chris Bosh. Then, of course, you got Steph Curry, the Splash Brothers with Kevin Durant, Wilt Chamberlain. And I just was like, it's got to be one of these two guys, man. It's got to be one of these two teams. It's got to be Heat. It's got to be Warriors. I completely didn't even consider the Spurs. I mean, I saw the players, but I was like, Spurs, Duncan, Robinson. And then I looked at it again. And I was like, hold on a second. Let me actually apply some analysis to this. I mean, this is what I'm here for, to give my analysis. And I looked at that all-time Spurs team again. Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Iceman. Ooh. I think I'm going to have to go with the San Antonio Spurs here. Now, I'm looking at these three teams, and I'm looking at it as if we're taking each of these players at their prime level when they were with this franchise. So I'm getting the best version of Heat Shaq. I'm not getting Lakers Shaq. Get what I'm saying? That's how I'm looking at it. They didn't set any rules, but I have to set some kind of rule here, right? I think I'm going with the San Antonio Spurs here. I think from a collective offense and defense, this is your best bet with the San Antonio Spurs. Kawhi Leonard, an all-time great defensive player. Obviously, we're not including injuries in this. Obviously. Or the Spurs would be immediately eliminated if we were considering injuries. They'd be the only team with 4 players, 4.5 players. But Kawhi Leonard, all-time great defensive player, and an all-time great offensive player. Obviously, injuries has affected his averages and productivity, but we know what he can do when he's healthy, is what I'm saying. The dude can score with the best of them, and he's highly efficient. Tony Parker probably doesn't match up with a lot of the players on this list, but during his time with the Spurs, there were conversations where he was getting brought up for best point guard in the league against Chris Paul. That was the thing. He does have a Finals MVP. He was an unstoppable little point guard, man. He played within the Mike D'Antoni system. Not Mike D'Antoni. He played in the Greg Popovich system. And the sacrifice that players have to make, sacrificing their individual numbers to play within the confines of the team. But if you watch basketball, Tony Parker was a hell of a player. Not necessarily the passer some other point guards were, but he could pass the ball, and he could score the ball. He could get the ball up court. He could run the offense. He could run the sets. Great off the pick and roll. Great off the screens. Great mid-range shooter. Could shoot the three and was unstoppable getting to the rack and finishing off the glass. We all know who the hell Tim Duncan is. I don't even have to say anything about Timmy. David Robinson, one of the greatest players of all time. All-time great defensive player and offensive player. The Admiral. He was admirable, but the Admiral. And then Iceman George Gervin. A lot of people don't talk about him. We're talking about one of the most prolific scorers who ever played the game of basketball at his position, especially. Even outside of his position. He was 6'7". shooting guard. Phenomenal. Iceman was no joke. He could score with the best of them. I'm looking at 4 guys, excluding Tony Parker, on the San Antonio Spurs team that can give it to you on both ends of the floor. I take that back. 3 guys. 3 guys. Kawhi, Tim Duncan, and David Robinson. And they were some of the most elite of the elite that we've ever seen defensively. And they can play in the confines of a team. And they can go get buckets in isolation. Look at their size outside of Tony Parker. They have great strength, great size, great length, extremely versatile. Also, all of these players on this all-time Spurs team make sense position-wise. Tim Duncan, we always call him the greatest power forward of all time, but we know he's power forward / center, as was David Robinson. So those are interchangeable. You want to put him at the 4 to 5, whatever. Kawhi Leonard can play the 3, but he can also play the 2, but he can definitely play the 3. The same thing with Iceman, 2 or 3, and Tony Parker is your point guard. They have key players in every position, and they can interchange with another player. That's crazy. You're talking about giving multiple players at multiple positions different looks from different players from the Spurs. That's crazy. When I look at this Spurs team, this is a team that has the least amount of chinks in their armor. They really do. I'm going to have to go with this Spurs team, man. That balance, that elite big lineup on both ends of the floor, and the scoring prowess, nah, I'm going with the Spurs. I know you can look at the Miami Heat team and say they got some size too. Obviously, they got LeBron James playing point guard at 6'8", point forward, whatever you want to call him. But I don't see a whole lot of interchanging between Dwayne Wade and Jimmy Buckets. I think they both are pretty much solidified in that 2 position. I think they'll get 8 up at the 3 position. Shaq, with the Miami Heat in his prime, wasn't the defensive. He was actually never a great defensive player at any point in his career, if we're going to be honest. Neither was Chris Bosh. Wade was. LeBron was. Jimmy Buckets, I think the Miami Heat team could potentially have some chemistry issues as well. And I don't know how effective LeBron is going to be getting to the rack where he thrives with Shaq hogging up all that space in the paint. I don't know. I have some concerns about that Miami Heat team. Sure, you look at the individual names, you're like, oh, LeBron, ooh, Shaq, ooh, Wade, Jimmy Buckets, ooh, Chris Bosh, ooh, I'm not sure about that. Now, as far as this Golden State Warriors team, 4 of these players, we've seen them run off 2 championships already, back-to-back, throwing Wilt Chamberlain, arguably the greatest player of all time, arguably the most dominant player of all time. Some people like to throw Shaq in there, whatever. That's a debate for another day. Steph Curry's a liability on defense. Draymond Green's a liability on offense. Scoring the ball, I understand his playmaking ability and passing. Scoring the ball, he's a liability. Klay Thompson can't create for himself. He's a catch-and-shoot shooter. Durant, underrated defensive player with the Golden State Warriors. He was pretty good. And we know what he can offer offensively. And we know what Wilt offers on both ends of the floor. But then again, I'm seeing more chinks in the armor. The Spurs are the one team here that have the less chinks in the armor. I'm going San Antonio Spurs. That's my argument. Y'all let me know what you think about it in the comment section. Sound off. I would love to hear your opinion and which team you're rolling with. I'll catch you on the next one. We out, baby.